let's make Apple Notes in 5 minutes. I literally just did this while I was watching a podcast and wanted to share it. So there's two tools, and you'll end up with a demo that looks something like this. So you have all the notes, you can pin them, you can type in here, you can see it update on the left, you can actually edit the different text with some styling, you can delete notes, pretty ridiculous. And all I did was a couple things. I downloaded Cursor. So if you haven't heard of Cursor, it's a fork of VS Code. And I also used V0. V0 is tuned on Next.js, which if you haven't used that, it's a framework. It's a set of tools that makes it easier to build apps. And so let's just jump in. We're going to start out by, yes, go either download Cursor. I'm assuming you've already done that. You can also use Homebrew. So if you're used to Homebrew, there is a Cursor download for that. You can just do brew install Cursor. Up next, we're going to do some settings in Cursor. So if you haven't used Cursor, definitely pay attention to this part. So I clicked on this cog. We'll just be going through the menus quickly. You can see under models, I have all of them disabled except for Claude 3.5 and the new O1s. I'm still using Claude 3.5. Under features, you want to make sure you have Cursor tab enabled. You want to make sure you have the following settings. You have Composer as well. All of these are good. And you want to make sure that your code base is indexed. All of this applies after we do our work in V0. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to walk through the thread that I made, because I don't need to make you watch me type everything. And you can see how powerful V0 is, where you literally just say make Apple Notes, and then it gives you a command that you run in Cursor, and you take it from there. I also have long chat enabled and AI review enabled. So once you have all those settings, I guess the last bit that I almost left out was if you were to work with third-party APIs or any sort of libraries that you wanted to have Cursor know about, you'd hit add new doc and you would paste that in. Now typically, pro tip, you want to actually go into the docs and go to the starting section of where you want it to know about. So you'd rather get more specific than less. So let's get into V0. So V0 is the starting point. And again, this is all I did. I typed in make the Apple Notes app. That was it. It started giving me all of this code. You can see that I did 4 versions of this to get to this point. That's it. It's crazy. And so I said, give me Apple Notes. It started writing the version of it. This is the first version. Not that great, but it started with something. Then I took a screenshot of my own notes. I said, make it look like this. Copy the aesthetic. Then it updated and it got closer. Then I said, make it better. Steve Jobs is here. Half of this blank is not working. Then it made it even better. It started using a library. If you ever see the red thing, it's because it's using a library that it's not able to run in the browser. And then finally, on V4, I got really close. I felt like it was good. All I was going to do now is I hit add to codebase. And I grabbed this. This is the magic. This is the sauce. So all I did then was I opened up my editor and I went into the terminal and I typed in the commands to install shadcn. So shadcn is a library of components. You can edit all of them if you wish. And I basically just would go to installation, Next.js, run that one command, and then after that one command, all I'm doing is running the command that V0 gave me. So I hit that. It gave me this entire Apple Notes component and all of these tooltips that were required, all the code right there, and then I just passed it in as a page. So that is mind-blowing. If you had to do this by hand, it would not take 5 minutes. I know I said this was going to be 5 minutes, we're at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Some of the bits then that I would go and start editing if I wanted to actually make this really good would be to do Command A, and I would do my edits with Command K. So inline, I can edit there. If I want to move it over to the right-hand side, I can do Command Shift L, and it will add it to the right pane. which I think is actually a pretty good way of editing multiple files. Then I could add other files. If I said break this into components, it would go and do that. If I wanted to create a composer project, then I would do Command-Shift-I, and then it'll open up this pane. And this is where you get multiple file edits. So it's similar to the pane that you just saw on the right-hand side. Key difference being that you can actually create a project. So if I said I want the project for Apple Notes to be Cloud Sync, then I would have a project, and I would add files in here, and I would add any files that I think have to do with cloud syncing, so that this actually would hit a database. And then anytime that I have any chat that's created through that project called Cloud Sync, it's going to have all the files focused already. So I just don't have to add them again. And that is it. It's V0, and it's Cursor, and it's knowing how to use these projects. As a little farewell gift, you want to check out the Cursor directory. This has been pretty helpful, and it basically gives you an additional prompt into how Cursor should operate. So I like this one. I would just copy this. It's a set of rules. I go back. I'm going to create a new file at the root, and I'd call it .cursorrules. And I just paste that in there. And all that's doing, instead of putting it in rules for AI, I can have it as this file. That's nice because 1, there's more space, 2, you can have version control, 3, if you wanted to have multiple of these in different files, then you could just swap them out. So if that was helpful, make sure you like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.